Premed Office Hours, episode 192. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host and MC for the day. I am here as the creator of the medical school headquarters, co-founder of Mapped, author of some books, and host of the Premed Years podcast. We are here every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to answer your questions and give you some hopefully some guiding light, some advice on your journey to medical school, hopefully some valid advice. I am joined today by two amazing people on the medical school HQ advising team. Verinia Granum, former assistant dean of pre-health and STEM advising at Hofstra University. Verinia, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. A little gloomy and rainy here in New York today. Spring keeps losing this fight to winter. We're like neck and neck. It's also like 30 degrees.
Oh no.
Yeah. Cold, rainy, and gloomy. My favorite.
Cold, rainy, and gloomy. And right down the road, just a little bit, we have Dina Golini hanging out in 90+ degree weather today.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Lucky
It's
you.
like 91 here in Florida, and just like, breezy, humid, cold front of like 77, I think, tomorrow. But I don't
cover those orange bushes.
cover the lemon tree. Yeah. But the gloominess, this used to be the worst time of the year, like I think, in New England, because it's just been gloomy for so long.
Yeah. So can it be
sending sunshine your way, Verinia?
Thank you.
Dina, you're the former senior admissions officer at Stanford and former assistant director of advising at Brown's Alpert Medical School. Awesome. Well, I am excited for today. We have questions coming in already because people want your amazing advice. People want help.
We're less than a month away from applications opening.
Right around the corner.
Don't let the secret out.
It's so fast.
It's so fast.
Before we jump in, I do want to mention applicationacademy.com right there. Show that little thing. We are closing applicationacademy.com for new signups starting the end of next week. It's time for people to join, get in, come hang out with us, and learn in a group setting. It is the most valuable thing we do from a value perspective in terms of how much you get for the cost. It's also $100 off right now at $4.99. And if you sign up by Friday, you get a free 15-minute advising call, one-on-one advising call with one of our amazing advisors. So go check that out. I'll leave that streaming for a little bit, and let's answer some questions. All right. So Rhino, great name. That was my nickname playing baseball, Rhino. I just started undergrad at my community college this past summer. I feel lost and behind. Any resources for new pre-meds that you can recommend? There's so much info. I don't know where to start. Verinia, this is such a common problem that I think I know what I would say. I want to know what you would say for someone struggling with just starting off their college journey and is saying, hey, I'm a pre-med student. What advice do you have for someone who's struggling right now?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my favorite type of student, the one that's just starting out. And there's no other process like pursuit of something like the pre-med path where you feel so behind before you're even getting started. I can't think of any other process that's like this. So right now, hang in there. This is very, very normal. But there are things that you can do to kind of get on track and help yourself understand that's the main thing. Educate yourself on what this process is. What do I need to do? What are the requirements? What are some of the things that I can start out with? Definitely first year, it's all about just getting to know the lay of the land as far as your studies go, your materials, the workload that the material that you're learning in your science classes, build that strong foundation, because you can't build a house on a shaky foundation. You need to have that foundation to be able to build on it with coursework. As you progress through these sciences, they're going to get harder. So definitely have a strong starting point. And then don't forget to also do the things that you love. So don't worry about having necessarily to pick a major right now and it has to be in the sciences. Don't worry about that. Just focus on taking, like I said, the prereqs, but also explore what are those things that you love and that could potentially turn into your major if you haven't decided yet. Starting out at a community college is totally fine. This is all about getting started, exploring, and building that solid foundation. And slowly you'll add on more things.
Definitely. I think that's the big thing that I would say is, Rhino, like, don't be a pre-med student right now. Just be
Yeah.
a college student.
student.
Learn how to
Yeah.
take these classes, learn how to adjust, ignore everything else. You'll have plenty of time to start adding in those things, as Bernie was mentioning, over time. So it's often the number one big mistake I talk about is when students are transitioning to college is trying to do too much too fast. And college is a whole different ballgame when it comes to what's expected of you course-wise, class-wise, etc. So hang in there. And I'm assuming, looking at your avatar with the Chicago Cubs there, that Rhino is a nice little head nod to the great Ryan Sandberg. So good job, Rhino. Love it. Love it. Love it. I wish I love baseball, right? I was a baseball player. I still kind of consider myself a baseball player. And I wish the Rockies were a better team. My local hometown team, the Colorado Rockies, are just a horrible, horrible team. It'd be so much more fun if they were good. Like the Avalanche and the Nuggets. They're good. All right. Victoria, hello. I've seen you guys strongly recommend against taking prereq classes that are online. What about hybrid classes? Some of my classes have labs and exams in person, but lectures are online. Dina, why do we strongly recommend against prereq classes online? And what about this hybrid world?
Well, I think for science courses, especially med schools want to see that you were in person and you were in labs. I think it's really difficult to take like orgochemistry online. I actually have a family friend, actually my best friend's daughter, so I'll give a shout out to her, who's in dental school and was like in the middle of the pandemic in college and had to take it online and had a terrible experience taking orgo, and then ended up having to kind of recap that later on. You just aren't getting the same out of it, right? And med school isn't going to be online. So that's the key here, that your experience in medical school will be in person. So schools want to see that you have been able to manage a curriculum, that you have engaged with professors, you've collaborated with other students. I think that if it's like maybe like a prereq, like a humanities prereq, but something that's a lab, a hard science, we just don't suggest that you do it online. For hybrid classes, if some classes have labs and exams in person, but the lectures are online, I mean, I think that could be potentially different, but how is it being viewed on your transcript? Like, is it appearing as an online course, right? Yeah, it's difficult, especially if you have a schedule where you just can't be in person, but just think med school will be in person. So
Yeah, and the big thing for me is not that it's like this moral stance that we're taking. It's online courses may potentially limit
limit you. Yes.
your school selection. And so go to the MSAR. This is for MD schools. Go to the MSAR. There is an online course category, and just go down the list. And more of these are green in terms of what they'll allow, but you'll see some of the yellow, which are case by case. And then some schools will scroll down. Again, you can see that a lot are online nowadays. A lot of case by case here for UCLA, David Geffen. I'm going to go to a red one. So red here, Georgetown's like, nope, we don't want any online. And so if you're typical, if you're potentially interested in some of these schools, it may limit you. And so that's where a lot of this recommendation comes from, of staying away from online courses, is it may limit your school selection later on. So it's not like we have some moral thing that's like, oh, online classes are bad. It's, I don't want you to get to a point where you're getting ready to apply to medical school and 30% of the schools that you were interested in applying to all of a sudden are out of the running because they don't accept online credits. And now what do? Do you go and take the credits again? Or do you just not apply to those schools, or do you beg and plead that they accept your online courses? So that's where that recommendation is coming from, Victoria. Good luck. Penelope, is it better to have 100 hours of shadowing one specialty or 100 hours of multiple specialties? This question comes in and
comes up every week.
Comes up all the time. I don't know a good way to answer this in like finality. Like, Vernia, like, what do you say when students ask this question?
I think it's great to have 100 hours at all of shadowing these days. So if you can get multiple doctors and specialties, sure, that's great. I think it helps you. Remember, the whole point of shadowing is to help yourself understand what you're getting yourself into, what the day-to-day is like. But there is a point where you kind of want to do a little bit more just to get more experience and be around patients and have more direct patient contact. So there is almost like a cap in terms of shadowing hours. So 100 hours is fantastic if you can get that. If you can get it with multiple doctors, that's even better. Different specialties. You know, ultimately, if all you have is that one experience of shadowing one doctor for 100 hours, then it is what it is. But I would still try to add on more direct patient care experience and direct patient contact, because that's going to be a lot more not eye-opening for you, but like more just beneficial in terms of your own experience and being around patients. So it's kind of a vague answer, but that's what I got.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Penelope. Good question. All right, let's keep it rocking. Farbod here. When researching schools, what should we pay attention to and subsequently mention in secondaries when asked why this school, especially as Canadian applicants who have never lived in the U.S.? Dina, was Stanford at all? Did they ask, like, why are you interested in our school, or did they just have the name that they just assumed everyone wanted to go there?
I think like every medical school, it's pretty common that one secondary prompt is centered around like, why Stanford, or like why Albert, why Georgetown, right? Because they want to know, like, why our school over other medical schools. And again, the premise of that is looking for fit. Are you a good fit? Do you align with our curriculum, our mission? So in answering that question, I think you should pay attention to what the school offers. Like, you can't just say, oh, I heard it's a great school, and that's why I think it's a great fit for me. You should be doing your research. You should be looking at the curriculum. Are you really interested in, say, primary care, and there's a primary care track? Are you really interested in a particular area of research, and research is part of their mission? And should you mention any sort of institute or academic faculty that's doing any really aggressive research in a certain area? Because when they're evaluating your application, it's they're asking themselves, like, is this candidate a good fit for our program?
Yeah. That is it. And all of that research should be going into building that school list, and not just preparing for why the school for interviews, right? If you've done your job preparing your school list well, preparing for the interview a question of why this school should be relatively easy, because you've already done that work.
Right.
So get rocking. Premedyears.com/437 is a great episode. I'll post it here. Premedyears.com/437. You can go check out how to build a school list. I'm going to redo that one shortly. All right, let's keep rocking here. Get rid of that one. Verinia, does hospice count as clinical experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an experience where you get to be with patients and their families. And honestly, it's a very special opportunity, I think, to kind of be in that moment with the family as they're helping their family member to transition. So 100% clinical, you're supporting the patient in different ways, keeping them comfortable. Go for it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Got to get at least one. Is it clinical? Question thrown in for the day.
Sure,
Andres has a question. How do medical schools schedule interviews? How far in advance do they let you know? Can you pick any dates or within a set range? Are they flexible? I know each school varies, but I'm just wondering. So Andres answered his own question, right? Each school
It depends.
varies a little bit. Yeah. But Dina, ever since COVID, right, with virtual interviews, things changed a bunch because schools don't have to account for travel time and hotels and all this stuff. They can go, hey, we have a spot open tomorrow. You want to interview?
Yeah, there are still some schools that have in-person interviews. I think Sydney Kimmel, Thomas Jefferson is one of them. But every school is different. So how do they schedule interviews? I mean, most schools will have like an interview coordinator and a calendar for the whole entire cycle where they have set interview dates. And as they review applications, and they just fill those interview slots. Again, it could be anywhere from like 1 day advance notice if somebody gives up a spot and you're kind of like next on the list, or it could be a few weeks, or it could be a few months. I know someone this cycle who was notified in like November for an interview, like New York Medical College, that was like last month. So it was like so far in advance, and it just depends. It just depends on staffing. It depends on how many people they have to train for their interview staff. There's so much that goes into it, that, what kind of platform and service are they using, if they're using MMI. But usually they'll give you an option of a few, like, 2 or 3 different dates and times, and you are able to pick. If it's last minute, then you aren't. So like it's not good practice to say like, oh, like, I don't think that this day and time is that, works that well for me. I'm not a morning person. You can't say things like that.
Please don't.
Please don't. And keep in mind that if you are international and you're not in the same like time zone as a school, I remember seeing that was pretty difficult for students that where it was like the middle of the night during our interview day. But you just, if you're traveling abroad, if you're doing something, you have to remember that like you might not get that option. You get the interview and you do it. Yeah.
I had a student I worked with last cycle who was working in South Korea during the entire cycle. So that was, our meeting times were interesting. His interview times were late at night, but he pushed through. He did it.
Make it work. This is what you want to do. You find a way. Z, I have a 3.6 GPA. Should I consider a master's program or should I focus on the MCAT? Brittany, is there enough information there to answer that question?
No, absolutely not, Z. I don't know. I mean, a 3.6 sounds like a strong GPA. Is there a downward trend? What makes you think that you need a master's program? Why would you need to do a master's? So we need more information. And yes, you should still focus on the MCAT no matter what. So that's kind of a side note there.
Yeah. The MCAT's still important, no matter what your GPA.
It's always important.
Melodies of the last days. I got a C in my Bio 201. Currently taking Bio 202. I am maintaining a grade of an A and almost done with the course. Let's say I do well on the MCAT with at least a 510, have a 3.9 GPA. Is that a good start? I don't know what the question is. Melody, what's your question? I don't understand. I don't understand. You're doing great. Keep going.
Yeah. Don't worry about the C.
Yeah.
C to an A. Yeah, keep going.
Keep going. C minus is not considered passing, and you'll need to retake, but a C, keep going. One grade does not define you. Nira, another GPA question here. How would med schools look at about a 3.4 GPA of someone from an Ivy, specifically known to be a hard/grade deflated Ivy, especially for a student who happens to be low income, immigrant, and faced adversities? And they did add upward trend. Upward trend. Dina, does the undergrad matter? Does the undergrad matter? I alternate, so it's not that hard. I threw the last one to Verinia. There's only two of you.
This needs more context, right? Like, you have to understand that, like, not everyone reading your application might know about grade deflation at your Ivy institution. Like, a lot of people, a lot of admissions use seasonal readers, right? Who are like faculty and doctors on staff. And it might be someone that knows nothing about, like, how one school is more competitive than another, or they have grade deflation, or their courses are known to be harder. Like, they're just looking at everything holistically. So I think I need more context here, right? Like, what's the information around the 3.4, right? Like, did you have an upward trajectory? Do you have low grades in all your science classes? Did you take some pass fail courses? I think you just need more context. It is a holistic review, as we say all the time. Yeah. But don't assume that schools will, someone's going to open up your application and say, I know this curriculum here, and I know about grade deflation, and I know how difficult the courses are. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Rerect. UC Berkeley has a cost-effective online post-bac program. Would you advise against this for someone who is looking to take a few extra courses for academic enhancement? So here's an interesting twist on the online aspect. Is it's not necessarily for prereqs, it's for some academic enhancement to say, hey, I can get good grades. Verinia, do you think online in this case for post-bac programs for grade enhancement comes with some asterisks with that?
Potentially, but I think it's fine, especially if it's an established online program. Berkeley has one, Harvard has another, like the extension programs. I think are okay. They're established, they're accredited, they're well known. Most of those classes are online. I don't know if they have like an in-person lab component, but if it's a class that doesn't even have a lab or require a lab, then I think it's okay. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Go for it. Working as a nurse assistant for clinical? Of course. Go ahead. That was a quick one I threw up. Let's see. A lot of similar questions coming in. Here's a good one from Harrison. Is it okay to get an LOR from a DO even if I'm applying to Texas MDs? The DO versus MD stigma continues, especially when it comes to letters of rec. There are some medical schools that request a letter of rec from a physician. They're few and far between. Dina, do you think it matters that a letter, if you're applying to an MD school, if the letter comes from a DO, they're like, ooh, what are you doing walking around with those people?
No, what matters is the content of the letter and how you want people who are going to write letters for you who know you best, right? Yep. So it's the content of the letter. The DO versus MD is not going to make a difference.
Yeah, DO versus MD is
doctor.
It's mostly a pre-med thing, and then there's still some residency stigma. But outside of that, there's no issues. You're a physician. You're out there practicing. You're doing your thing. Yeah, don't worry about it. All right, let me hide all of those. It's so funny. People see one question. They're like, oh, I have the same question. So let me ask two. It's not UC Berkeley. It's Baylor. Like we answered that question. Apply your knowledge to it. Cairo, I have an acceptance for the upcoming class. Congrats. Can I reach out to the school and get a more detailed breakdown of materials covered in the curriculum? Just want to become familiar and plan how to study. Interesting.
Yeah.
Tina?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like most med schools post their curriculum on their websites, particularly like just details about how it's broken up, right? In terms of like, M1, M2, clerkship. So there's usually a nice graphic like roadmap. So I would kind of do that research first on their website and see what you can find. But the other thing is, if you have an acceptance and you've been invited to like their admitted students day, which April is recruiting month, so I'm sure that you got invited. That's a great time to go and ask questions like this. Usually there will be presentations from the deans of like med ed, where they'll go over the curriculum, talking to current students who are there also, and getting some suggestions and getting some tips. But I think just reaching out and saying, tell me about the curriculum, I think you have to do a little legwork first, because I think you can gather most information you need from those resources that I mentioned.
Yeah. And that potentially is a good place to go. Kind of one of the only times I'll mention Student Doctor Network is potentially going to the MD side of it or the DO side of it, the class side of it, not the pre-med side, and ask current students what to potentially do. But I will tell you, Cairo, the majority of students will tell you, do not try to prepare for medical school. Once you are accepted, take that acceptance, go put your feet up. What my recommendation is start building those lifestyle habits, exercise, sleep, diet, all of those things. Because once medical school starts, the onslaught of torture begins, and it's good to have a lot of those kind of self-care routines built in, so you can hopefully maintain those and don't gain 30 pounds your first year of medical school like I did. Yeah. So do that.
Not know that.
Yeah.
Learn something new about you every day.
Yeah, it was not the best version of me. But that's okay, right? I went in with great routines. I was working at a gym, working out twice a day, went in the best shape of my life, and came out of first year kind of the worst shape of my life. It was painful. But we survived. We did it. Yeah, don't try to prepare for that. Jan, what do I do? That is a very interesting avatar picture there. It's like a head that's been degloved, scalped, maybe. I don't know. What do I do? Full ride to a new school or $40,000 scholarship a year to a school with amazing match list into neurosurgery, optho, ortho? I'm going to answer this one because I'm very opinionated when it comes to looking at match lists for schools. I literally was just talking to a parent about this morning. The students make the match list, not the school. The student makes the match list. Yes, the school may provide you with access to amazing residencies and program directors who may write you strong letters of recommendations. So there are some aspects of the school that you go to that may help you in that world, but it's your board scores, unfortunately, still board scores, step 2, level 2. It's your evaluations, your letters of recommendations that play the biggest part. Your interviews, your writing skills, your application, all of that plays a huge part into where you will match and what specialty you will match in. But Jan, I want you to think not only about the match list, but about fit. Where do you feel like the culture of the school, the location, all of that stuff, the curriculum style, where do you feel like you will thrive the most? Because that will determine your success as a student, which will have a bigger impact on your ability to match versus the school's match list, which is irrelevant in my mind. So go for it. And I'm assuming $40,000 a year scholarship will still leave you with probably $40,000 a year in debt, because med school is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not nothing. And that's what typically new schools will do, is they will give full ride scholarships, because as a preliminarily accredited institution, you are not eligible for financial aid, which doesn't make sense to me, that the government's like, yeah, we're not going to give you money because you're going to a new school. Seems weird. So anyway, Gerda, do we add an activity /EC that we start in May or June of the year we are applying, even though there's not much to say about the experience? Now, Verinia, we had a change in AMCAS where they have completed hours and anticipated hours now, which is wonderful. It kind of makes a clear distinction on what has been done versus what theoretically will be done. But we get this question a lot, especially because just the normal timeline of things, students are a lot of times graduating from school and moving back home. And so a lot of things that they've been doing, they're stopping, and they're going to start something new for their gap year or whatever it is that they're about to jump into. So it's a natural timeline for things to stop and start. And we end up with this question.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, there's different reasons for why, things may be upcoming and starting after the application's open and you submit. So there is an opportunity to talk about an anticipated experience, because you'll be able to enter in those anticipated hours. But the part about what to say about the experience is key, right? It's really important, because you're right. You will not have had as much time there to be able to write meaningfully about it. You can kind of just talk a little bit about why you are pursuing that activity, what you're looking forward to while you're there. But there's not much more that you can say. You'll have an opportunity potentially in secondaries to write more about your gap year plans. But just think about how you can write what you're excited about what you're looking forward to in that activity. That's going to be kind of a meaningful description. I will caution you, if you don't have other experiences or a lot of other experiences, you want to be careful that you're not adding a bunch of stuff that's just going to look like fluff. So hopefully you have other experiences where you have had an opportunity to reflect on and write meaningfully about them. But is it okay to do that? Yes. And it's okay to write about what you're looking forward to and why you want to do this activity.
Yeah. And I think the distinction has to be made for someone who maybe doesn't have clinical experience and is starting clinical experience at the start of the application cycle. I would say big red flag, and potentially think about delaying an application because you haven't done anything yet, potentially. I'm not saying, Gerda, that's your case, but we see it all the time where students are really surprised why they didn't get into school. And I look at their application and say, well, you didn't do anything. And they go, yeah, but I did it all during the application cycle. Like, I checked the box. And I'm like, that's not the point. So, this question comes up all the time, and we have to figure out how to promote Application Academy better. Ramita, Application Academy covers everything needed to apply to medical school, including interview prep. So yeah, we have sessions every single week for essay editing, Q&A, interview prep, all that good stuff. And actually, starting next cycle, I think we're going to go back to a different format where it's a lot more structured, kind of following the natural evolution of the application cycle, where kind of we start with personal statement activities, and then we move on to secondaries, and then we move on to interview prep. And so it'll be a lot more streamlined and understandable. So yeah, go check it out. And we do have discounts for FAP as well. You can go check that out, applicationacademy.com. Mr. Yu, do you think it is okay to submit my application before my recommendation and receive my MCAT score? So, for clarification standpoint, to get verified by the application services, and I'll strictly speak about AMCAS and ACOMAS because TMDSAS does something a little bit different. You need a personal statement. I guess you don't really need one. You need your activities. You need your transcripts and grades put into the system, and transcripts requested and sent to the application service. And you need at least one school to be entered, and then all of your demographic info. You don't need an MCAT score. You don't need your letter of recommendations solidified. You can change all of that after. The verification process doesn't need letters. They don't need your MCAT score. So yeah, you can do that, Mr. Wu, or you. I just learned, I thought it was a little bit different, but TMDSAS, I knew that they didn't verify grades and transcripts on initial submission like AMCAS and ACOMAS do. I found out yesterday that TMDSAS doesn't, they historically, at least the last couple of years, they will request transcripts when they want them and say, okay, hey, we're ready for your transcripts. Go ahead and send them. But I learned yesterday that it's when you've been accepted that they request them. So based on, I guess, their data, and I think this is really smart, that there aren't that many students lying about grades. It happens, but there aren't that many students lying about grades to worry about it until you've been accepted, right? It's like doing a background check when you've been hired and not before, because it's like, okay, we're going to hire you. Now we're going to look into your dirty laundry. And so TMDSAS will not request your transcripts until you've been accepted to a Texas medical school, which I think is really smart. And then they'll verify. And then if you lied, then you're in big trouble.
That's what the UC schools do for undergrad.
Yeah.
You have, it's one portal, one application date for all the UC schools. You input all of your courses, all the grades you received, quarter by quarter, year by year, and then they request the transcript if you commit to attend and kind of match it up. Yeah,
makes sense.
It does, and it's less like documents, paperwork, data.
Yeah, because if you just think about it logically, right? For Texas medical schools, I think the number's like 6,000 or 7,000 students are applying to Texas medical schools for 2,500 spots or something, right? Why should they verify the other 3,500 or whatever it is applications and grades and transcripts if they're not going to get into the Texas medical school? So it's just logical with limited resources, and maybe that's the biggest reason they do it, is they're kind of a little bit more strict, being a government organization, being TMDSAS. But yeah, I like it. I think AMCAS and ACOMAS should potentially look into that as well, although because it's not all one big system run by the government, by a government agency, it's a little more messy. Yeah. So, David Diaz, any input on where/how military experience should be shared? I spent 8 years in the Navy with multiple deployments and assignments as an instructor of combat medicine. Not sure how to separate it. This comes up all the time. Verini, I'll throw this one to you. Comes up all the time.
Nick, you should answer this question.
I know. I was thinking that. How would you do it, right?
Well, it comes up. I wasn't in the military when I applied to med school.
Yeah, I know.
Especially for non-traditional students, whether it's military or just a long career in one job where they're wearing lots of different hats. What is the best way to separate this? Because in the military, one person over 8 years could have 8 different roles potentially, and all of the different hats that they're wearing in each of those individual roles, it could easily take up 6 or 8 spots. And is that a good use of space? And is that okay? And all that stuff.
It depends. I mean, I worked with an applicant who was same situation in the Navy, multiple roles. And for him, it worked out. We broke things down, 4 or 5 different slots. The goal is to highlight your passion for medicine and how you've chosen to spend your time. That's the whole goal of the activities section. So if you have more than 15 for AMCAS and you're looking at ways to combine, you can potentially combine clinical experiences under one category. Sorry, I just lost one of my AirPods. Can you all hear me? There it is.
Yep.
So that's one thing, looking at the categories and seeing where you can combine things, leadership roles, like all those different categories. That's I think the best approach, but don't feel like you have to put everything on there, right? Try to kind of give a little kind of a mix of the different things that you have done, but it is okay to separate it. Just try to group together things by those categories. That's kind of the best advice I can give.
Yeah. Dean, any extra thoughts there?
No, I agree. I actually worked with a student yesterday who was a military applicant, and we had the same exact conversation, like how to, separate things. What was, leadership, like he had a lot of like social justice, like advocacy roles, just separating it out the best way that you can. To talk about how meaningful they are and how many hours, you completed. So you have to a little attention to detail, I think.
Yep.
With how you do it.
Yep. Let's see. I like this question, and one of the newer prompts on AMCAS. Emily asks, what are your recommendations for approaching the other impactful experiences AMCAS essay? So for a quick history lesson, AMCAS historically has had the disadvantaged essay on their application, and they ask, like, do you consider yourself disadvantaged? And if you say yes, then you get 1,325 characters to talk about it. In preparation for the SCOTUS decision last year, removing affirmative action, AMCAS proactively said, we're going to get rid of the disadvantaged essay because a lot of people used it as a kind of minority type essay. And they said, hey, do you have any impactful experiences you would like to talk about? I love this change because I think everyone has impactful experiences that add context potentially to an application. Dina, what are your discussion points when we're discussing this essay with students?
Yeah, I'm actually going to post the link from the AAMC guide in the chat box. I don't know if it'll work or if I did the right way. I think that when you have something that has impacted your journey or your education or your road to medical school, it's important to talk about it. Not using it as a box to just complain, but tying it into something. So, it has to be something that you feel like made your journey maybe a little more difficult, where you had to overcome something. So maybe you moved around a lot as a child. I've read that a lot. Like, I moved around probably 12 times, or I had to take a leave from school for a year because I, couldn't afford it and I had to work for a year to then, have money, or I had an illness, or I lost a family member. I worked with someone a few weeks ago who was on a college campus during a mass shooting, and it was during her final exams, and it impacted like all her grades for her final exams, where she didn't have an option to take a grade. She had to take pass fail, and then just like, how traumatic that was afterwards. So just use it for the right reasons. To use it and just give a sentence, it's not going to offer a lot of context. But I think from the admission side, like explaining how an experience impacted you along the way definitely gives more insight into you as an applicant. But again, like, don't make something up, or don't assume like something that really isn't impactful is impactful. It really needs to be something that you feel is worth mentioning, that admissions should know about, for context.
Yeah. Love it. Jennifer has a wonderful question here that comes up quite often, whether it's a PT office or a dental office or a chiro office. Jennifer asks, I have roughly 750 clinical experience hours in a physical therapy outpatient clinic where I work directly hands-on with patients all day. What is the stigma around working as a PT aide? So, Verinia, is there a stigma around working as a PT aide, or is it something else?
I don't know if it's a stigma. I do hear different takes on this all the time, and I myself don't understand it because I do see it as you're helping patients, whether it's through therapeutic exercises, whatever it is. It's still, in my view, impacting the care or providing care and impacting the health and well-being of another person, which is how we define clinical experiences. So happy to hear what maybe Dina, if you saw this on an application, how would you view it having that kind of admissions perspective?
Yeah, I think I agree with Rinia. I don't think it's a stigma. I think if it's your only experience, I might question like why not go to PT school?
Yeah.
Why not become a PT? If you've poured 750 hours into this, but you have no other exposure to clinical medicine, no other exposure with an MD or DO, I might say, why not become a PT? So I think it's just a delicate balance of making sure that, you talk about it in a way where it's patient-centered, the work that you did do in the clinic, but you also have additional experience to back up, like, look, I did this so that I could gain patient exposure, but I also know what medicine looks like.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is, hey, especially if this is your main / only clinical experience and you're like, hey, I really like taking care of patients. I'm like, I don't see that. I see that you like being in a PT office. So like, go be a PT. So just I bring everything down. I was talking about this a lot yesterday during Application Academy. Actually, we were reviewing seeds, like this initial kind of exposure to healthcare, to medicine for students who want to go explore healthcare. And one of the seeds a student talked about was having a sibling with autism. And there was nothing in the story about exposure to healthcare. It was just all about having a sibling with autism. And I said, well, how do you get from having a sibling with autism to knowing you want to go explore healthcare? You didn't connect the dots for me. And I'm a very, just give it to me very simply, very plain, connect the dots for me, make it easy for my brain to understand this. And Jennifer, it's not a stigma. It's just, it's not logical for you to go, I really enjoyed being in a PT clinic. That's why I want to be a doctor. Like they're not connected, right? And so that's the issue, is there's just no logical connection for you to go, I really loved being a PT aide, therefore I want to be a physician.
I agree.
Joe asks a question that comes up often. I'm applying to medical school with a former DUI conviction. This happened over 4 years ago, and I have volunteered at an alcohol rehab center. Is there any chance I get accepted anywhere? Verinia, have you ever worked with someone with a DUI?
Yes, actually, I have.
Dina, have you ever seen students applying and getting in with DUIs? I have as well. Joe, you're okay.
Yep.
Take responsibility. Don't do it again. It's interesting. I had a student who was just an acquaintance, not someone I was working with, was accepted to medical school and then got a DUI. And they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm like, you need to go talk to the school right now. And they were okay, right? We are humans. We screw up. Take responsibility, take ownership. Hopefully nobody was hurt. That's a big part of it as well. I will never forget. I like talking about it because nothing bad happened, and I There was nothing. I had to do a field sobriety test one night in college because I ran a stop sign leaving campus, and they're like, "Get out," and like walk a straight line and do this and do that. And I was kind of having fun with it because I wasn't drunk and I was completely sober, and so it was just really random. And I was like, "This is weird," and I'm really scared, but this is kind of weird. Anyway, yeah, don't drink and drive, friends. I didn't get a ticket, by the way. That was the highlight of that one. All right. That is the questions for today. There are no more. I might have missed a couple of good ones. applicationacademy.com. We are closing our doors next week. We have a workshop next week on interviews. I will be doing that solo on Monday. If you go to premedevents.com or premedworkshops.com, it'll take you there to register. So you get a link to join us and learn more about Application Academy and all the fun stuff that we do there. Dina Verinia, we are still accepting students to work one-on-one for this application cycle. Verinia, why should someone work with you for the application cycle?
Because I know how to help you apply to medical school. I really, really, really like helping students figure out how to share their story, how to tell medical schools why they're on this path, and kind of what their motivations have been along the way. And so it's one of my most favorite things to do is work with students one-on-one because of that, just helping them figure out how to phrase it all and put their applications together.
Yeah. Dina, I'm assuming very similar for you. Why do you like working with students for the application cycle?
I love the aha moments. I love, drawing like authentic stories for personal statements and writing out of students. Like just being part of that journey and sharing stories. And I also love just to be a sounding board. I think, you can talk to parents during this process, you can talk to friends, you can talk to other people who've gone through it, but to talk to advisors who do this every single day, I think having somebody to turn to and to get advice from is really priceless. So yeah. I love it.
Love it. Love it. Go to medicalschoolhq.net. Check out our advising options if you would like to. If you want to set up a one-time call with us, you can use the coupon code PMOH to save some money. Yeah, come work with us. Come check us out. And we are here again every Wednesday rather at 1 p.m. Eastern. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.